It was supposed to be the beginning of forever. A 29-year-old woman boards a plane from California to Texas, her heart racing with excitement, her phone clutched tightly in her hand as she texts the man she's been talking to for months, the man she believes is her soulmate, the man who's been promising her a future filled with love, laughter, and everything she's ever dreamed of. She lands at Dallas-Fort Worth International Airport on a humid Friday afternoon, her smile bright, her eyes hopeful. She checks into a modest hotel room just off the highway, the kind with thin walls and flickering fluorescent lights. She sends one last message to her younger sister back home. "I'm here. He's everything I imagined. I'll call you tomorrow." But tomorrow never comes, because 14 hours after stepping off that plane, after finally meeting the man she thought was the love of her life, her body is discovered in that very hotel room, cold, lifeless, and clutching her phone in her hand with a single search tab still open on the screen. What she found out in those final hours, what she stumbled upon in the quiet moments before her death, would send investigators down a path they never expected, a path that revealed a man who wasn't who he claimed to be, a man who had been hiding something so devastating, so carefully buried, that when she uncovered it, he made sure she would never tell anyone. This is the story of how a search for love turned into a fight for survival, and how one woman's curiosity cost her everything. Before we dive deeper, let us know in the comments where you're watching from. We'd love to hear from you. And if you're new here, click on the subscribe button so you never miss any of our upcoming videos. Who was this man that Sarah trusted with her life? What was he hiding behind that charming smile and those carefully crafted messages? And why did she have to die just hours after discovering his secret? These are the questions that haunted investigators as they pieced together the final moments of Sarah Mitchell's life. Was this a crime of passion, a moment of rage that spiraled out of control? Or was it something more calculated, more deliberate? What exactly did Sarah find on her phone that night that sealed her fate? And how many other women had come dangerously close to meeting the same end? Her name was Sarah Mitchell, 29 years old, a graphic designer living in San Diego, California. She had a small apartment near the coast, a close-knit group of friends, and a family who adored her. By all accounts, Sarah was the kind of person who lit up a room. She was warm, optimistic, and had a laugh that was contagious. But beneath that bright exterior was a loneliness she didn't often talk about. She'd been single for almost 2 years, after a breakup that left her questioning whether she'd ever find someone who truly understood her. Her younger sister, Emily, would later tell detectives that Sarah had always been a romantic at heart. She believed in soulmates. She believed that somewhere out there was someone meant just for her, and in the spring of that year she thought she'd finally found him. His name, or at least the name he gave her, was David Cole. They met on a dating app designed for people who loved to travel, a platform where users could connect over shared destinations and wanderlust. David's profile was simple but charming. He was 34, lived in Austin, Texas, and worked in real estate. His photos showed a man with kind eyes, a warm smile, and a casual confidence that Sarah found attractive. He wasn't flashy. He didn't have shirtless gym photos or pictures of himself on yachts. He looked normal, approachable, safe. Their first conversation was easy. He asked about her design work, and she asked about his love for hiking. They talked about places they'd traveled, places they dreamed of going. He was attentive, always responding quickly, always asking follow-up questions. He remembered small details she mentioned, like her favorite coffee order or the name of her childhood dog. It felt genuine. It felt real. And for Sarah, who had been on countless dead-end dates and talked to men who seemed more interested in themselves than in her, David felt like a breath of fresh air. Over the next few months, their connection deepened. They texted every day, sometimes late into the night. He'd send her good morning messages with little heart emojis. She'd send him photos of her latest design projects, and he'd respond with encouragement and praise. They talked about everything: their childhoods, their fears, their dreams for the future. He told her about growing up in a small town in Oklahoma, about losing his mother to cancer when he was young, about how he'd moved to Texas to start fresh. She told him about her own struggles, about feeling invisible in past relationships, about wanting someone who saw her for who she really was. And he made her feel seen. He made her feel heard. He made her feel like she mattered. But there were small things, little inconsistencies that Sarah's friends noticed but that she brushed off. David rarely wanted to video chat. He'd say his camera was broken, or that he was too tired after work, or that he preferred to talk on the phone because it felt more intimate. When they did talk on the phone, his background was always quiet, almost too quiet. No roommates, no pets, no sounds of a bustling city, just him. Sarah's best friend, Jessica, later told police that she'd warned Sarah to be careful. "I just felt like something was off," Jessica said in her statement. "He never posted anything on social media. He didn't have many photos, and whenever Sarah asked to meet his friends or see where he worked, he'd change the subject." But Sarah was in love, or at least she thought she was, and when David suggested they finally meet in person, that he'd book a hotel room in Dallas so they could spend a weekend together, she didn't hesitate. She bought a plane ticket, packed her favorite dresses, and told everyone she knew that she was finally going to meet the man of her dreams. The flight was uneventful. Sarah texted Emily from the airport, sending her a photo of her boarding pass with the caption, "Here we go. Wish me luck." Emily responded with a string of heart emojis and a warning to stay safe. "Text me when you land," she wrote, "and send me his address just in case." Sarah promised she would. She landed at Dallas-Fort Worth at 2:15 in the afternoon. The Texas heat hit her the moment she stepped outside, thick and oppressive. She grabbed an Uber and headed to the hotel, a budget chain off Interstate 35. It wasn't fancy, but David had said it was close to where he lived, and that they'd spend most of their time exploring the city anyway. She checked in, dropped her bags in the room, and immediately texted him. "I'm here, room 214. Can't wait to see you." His response came quickly. "On my way. Be there in 20 minutes." Sarah's heart raced. She changed her clothes, fixed her hair, and paced the small room, her excitement almost unbearable. She FaceTimed Emily, who was at work but answered anyway. "How do I look?" Sarah asked, spinning in front of the camera. "You look beautiful," Emily said, smiling. "Are you nervous?" "Terrified," Sarah admitted with a laugh, but in a good way. "Just be careful, okay?" Emily said. "And text me later." "I will," Sarah promised. "I love you." "Love you too." That was the last time Emily saw her sister alive. David arrived at the hotel at 3 o'clock. Sarah later texted Emily a single message, "He's here. He's perfect." And for the next few hours, everything seemed fine. Surveillance footage from the hotel shows them leaving together around 4:30, getting into his car, a silver sedan with tinted windows. They returned around 7, carrying takeout bags and drinks. They were laughing, talking, looking like any other couple enjoying a first date. But something changed. Neighbors in the adjacent room later told police that they heard raised voices around 9:30, not quite shouting, but loud enough to notice. A woman's voice, tense and upset. A man's voice, defensive and sharp. And then silence. At 10:47, a guest in the room next door called the front desk to report a loud thud, followed by what sounded like someone crying. The desk clerk called the police. When officers arrived at 10:58, they knocked on the door of room 214. No answer. They knocked again, louder this time, identifying themselves. Still nothing. Using the master key, they opened the door, and what they found would haunt every officer who responded that night. Sarah Mitchell was lying on the floor between the bed and the bathroom, her body twisted at an unnatural angle. Her phone was still in her hand, the screen illuminated. There were signs of a struggle, overturned furniture, scratches on the walls, her purse contents spilled across the carpet. And David Cole was gone. The investigation moved quickly. Detectives arrived within the hour, sealing off the room and beginning their work. The medical examiner would later determine that Sarah had died from blunt force trauma to the head, consistent with being struck multiple times against a hard surface. There were defensive wounds on her hands and arms, indicating she had tried to fight back, but what caught investigators' attention immediately was her phone. It was still unlocked, still glowing in her hand, and on the screen was a browser tab, a search query, 5 words that changed everything. David Cole Austin, Texas arrest. Detectives stared at the screen, their minds racing. What had she found? What had she discovered that led to this? They began digging into David Cole's background, expecting to find a criminal record, maybe a history of domestic violence or assault. But what they found was even more disturbing. There was no David Cole, at least not the one Sarah had been talking to. The man who picked her up at the hotel, the man who spent those final hours with her, had been using a fake name. His real name was Marcus Anthony Brennan, and he had a past that explained why he'd gone to such lengths to hide his identity. Marcus Brennan was 37 years old, not 34 as he'd claimed. He wasn't from Oklahoma. He was from a small town outside of Lubbock, Texas, and his childhood was nothing like the one he'd described to Sarah. Court records revealed that Marcus had been arrested twice in his 20s, once for assault and once for stalking an ex-girlfriend. Both cases had been settled quietly, the records sealed after he completed probation and anger management courses. But the most shocking discovery came when detectives searched his apartment. Marcus lived alone in a rundown complex on the outskirts of Austin. Inside, they found a laptop, and on that laptop, they found folders, dozens of them, each one labeled with a woman's name. Inside each folder were screenshots of conversations, photos, personal details. Marcus had been running multiple fake profiles on dating apps, using different names, different photos, different stories. He targeted women who seemed lonely, vulnerable, searching for connection. He'd spend months building their trust, learning everything about them, making them fall for him, and then he'd arrange to meet them. Most of the time, nothing happened. He'd meet the woman, spend a day or two with her, and then ghost her, moving on to the next target. But with Sarah, something had gone wrong. Detectives believed that during their time together, Sarah had started to notice inconsistencies. Maybe he slipped up, used the wrong name, mentioned something that didn't match what he'd told her before. Maybe she saw something on his phone, a message from another woman, another identity. Whatever it was, she'd started searching. And when she typed David Cole Austin, Texas arrest into her phone, she likely found nothing, because David Cole didn't exist. But in that moment, she would have realized the truth. The man she'd flown across the country to meet, the man she thought she loved, wasn't who he claimed to be. And when she confronted him, when she demanded answers, he panicked. The autopsy report painted a grim picture. Sarah had been struck at least 4 times, the injuries consistent with her head being slammed against the bathroom counter. The coroner estimated that she'd died within minutes, her skull fractured, her brain hemorrhaging. There was evidence that she'd tried to defend herself. Scratches on Marcus's face and arms later confirmed by his arrest photo, but she was no match for him. Marcus Brennan was arrested 2 days later at a gas station just outside of Houston. He'd been driving south, possibly planning to flee to Mexico. When police pulled him over, he didn't resist. He was calm, almost eerily so. In the interrogation room, he denied everything at first. He claimed Sarah had fallen, that it was an accident, that she'd slipped in the bathroom and hit her head. But the evidence told a different story. The force required to cause her injuries wasn't consistent with a fall. The defensive wounds on her body weren't consistent with an accident. And the fact that he'd fled the scene, that he'd tried to run, made his story impossible to believe. Eventually, under pressure from detectives, Marcus admitted to the fight. He said Sarah had accused him of lying, that she'd threatened to call the police, that she'd started screaming. He claimed he'd only wanted to calm her down, to get her to stop yelling. But somewhere in that struggle, he'd lost control. He'd grabbed her, pushed her, and when she tried to run, he'd pulled her back. And in that moment, In that tiny hotel bathroom, he'd made a choice. A choice that ended Sarah Mitchell's life. The trial was swift. Marcus Brennan was charged with second-degree murder, and the prosecution built a case around the evidence found in his apartment, the fake identities, the pattern of manipulation. They painted a picture of a man who preyed on vulnerable women, who lied and deceived to get what he wanted. And when Sarah discovered the truth, he killed her to keep his secret. The defense argued that Marcus had never intended to hurt Sarah, that the death was the result of a moment of rage, not premeditation. They claimed he was guilty of manslaughter, not murder, but the jury didn't buy it. After 3 days of deliberation, they returned a guilty verdict. Marcus Brennan was sentenced to 35 years in prison without the possibility of parole. As the judge read the sentence, Sarah's family sat in the front row, holding each other, tears streaming down their faces. Emily, Sarah's younger sister, later told reporters that the verdict didn't bring Sarah back. "Nothing will ever make this okay," she said, her voice shaking. "My sister deserved to be loved. She deserved to be safe, and instead, she met a monster who took everything from her." But Emily also spoke about the lesson she'd learned from her sister's death. If someone won't video chat with you, if they're vague about their life, if something feels off, trust your gut, she said. Don't ignore the red flags. Don't make excuses for them, because my sister did, and it cost her her life. In the months after the trial, Sarah's story made national headlines. News outlets across the country covered the case, highlighting the dangers of online dating and the importance of verifying someone's identity before meeting them in person. Dating apps began implementing stricter verification processes, requiring users to submit photos and identification to prove they were who they claimed to be. But for Sarah's family, none of that mattered. Sarah was gone, and no amount of policy changes or safety measures would bring her back. Emily started a foundation in her sister's name, dedicated to educating young women about the risks of online dating and providing resources for victims of dating violence. She travels to schools and community centers, sharing Sarah's story, hoping that by telling it, she can prevent another family from experiencing the same heartbreak. "I don't want my sister to be remembered as just another victim," Emily says. "I want her to be remembered as someone who loved fiercely, who believed in the good in people, and who deserved so much better than what she got." The hotel where Sarah died has since closed, the building now sitting empty, a grim reminder of what happened there. But Sarah's memory lives on, in the photos her friends and family share on social media, in the foundation that bears her name, in the countless women who have heard her story and made the decision to be more careful, to ask more questions, to trust their instincts. As for Marcus Brennan, he remains in prison, his appeals denied at every turn. Investigators continue to look into the other women whose names appeared in those folders on his laptop, reaching out to them, making sure they're safe. Some of them had no idea they'd been targeted. Others had suspected something was off, but hadn't known the full extent of Marcus's lies. Each one of them considers themselves lucky. Lucky that they didn't end up like Sarah. Lucky that they got away before it was too late. But Sarah's story raises questions that still haunt those who knew her. Could she have been saved? Were there signs that everyone missed? Could something have been done differently? The truth is, Sarah did everything she thought was right. She talked to David or Marcus for months before agreeing to meet him. She told her friends and family where she was going. She checked in regularly. But none of that was enough, because Marcus was a master manipulator, someone who knew exactly how to gain trust, how to make someone feel safe, how to hide his true intentions until it was too late. And that's what makes this case so terrifying. Because Sarah wasn't reckless. She wasn't naive. She was simply a woman looking for love, a woman who believed in the goodness of people. And that belief cost her her life. So what can we learn from Sarah Mitchell's story? How do we protect ourselves in a world where anyone can be anyone, where a few carefully chosen words and a fake profile can hide a monster? The answer isn't simple, but experts say there are steps you can take. Always video chat before meeting someone in person. If they refuse, that's a red flag. Search their name online, look for inconsistencies, verify their identity. Meet in a public place for the first few dates, and let someone know where you're going. Trust your instincts. If something feels off, it probably is. And most importantly, don't ignore the red flags. Don't make excuses for behavior that makes you uncomfortable. Because as Sarah's story shows, sometimes those red flags are the only warning you'll get. Emily Mitchell wants people to know that her sister's death wasn't in vain. If Sarah's story saves even one person, if it makes even one person think twice before getting on that plane or getting into that car, then maybe, just maybe, something good can come from this tragedy, she says. Because my sister was an incredible person. She was kind, she was loving, she was full of life, and she deserved so much better than what she got. As we close this story, we want to hear from you. How does Sarah's story make you feel? Do you think there's more that could have been done to protect her? Have you ever ignored a red flag in a relationship? And if so, what made you finally see the truth? Leave your thoughts in the comments below. We read every single one. And if this story opened your eyes, if it made you think about your own safety or the safety of someone you love, share this video. Because the more people who hear Sarah's story, the more lives we can potentially save. 14 hours. That's all it took for Sarah Mitchell's dream to turn into a nightmare. 14 hours from the moment she landed in Texas to the moment her life was stolen from her. She went looking for love. She found betrayal. She went looking for a future. She found an ending. And all because a man couldn't let her walk away with the truth. Rest in peace, Sarah Mitchell. Your story will not be forgotten. And to everyone watching, stay safe. Trust your instincts, and never, ever ignore the warning signs. Because sometimes, the person you're falling for isn't the person they claim to be, and by the time you find out the truth, it might already be too late. Thank you for watching. If you want to hear more stories like this, check out the video on your screen right now, and don't forget to subscribe so you never miss an upload. Until next time, stay safe out there.